There's no guidebook for how to react when your ex-wife's toothbrush shows up in the cup holder of your car 10 months after you left her. Not on the seat, not in the glove box, in the damn cup holder. Like it lived there. Mint green, worn bristles, a smear of dried toothpaste on the handle like she had used it today. Thing is, I haven't spoken to her since I disappeared. Literally vanished. I packed in silence. Didn't tell a soul. Dropped my wedding ring into the storm drain at exit 92 and kept driving until the gas light came on. She had no idea where I went. That was the point. So when I opened the driver's door and saw her toothbrush chilling like it belonged, I did what any emotionally unstable man would do. I sat in the car and stared at it for a full hour without touching it. Then I spiraled. I checked my dash cam. Nothing. Of course, I haven't used it since January. I called my brother. He thought I was having a stroke. I even asked the mechanic at Jeb's Auto if someone could have planted it while changing the oil. He said, "That's not even the weirdest thing I've found in a Hyundai. By the way, I don't live anywhere near her anymore. She's supposed to be in Vermont. With him. A man named Blaine. Yes, Blaine. Not Blake. Blaine. He owns a pottery studio and wears scarves in July. I knew about him 2 months before I left. I just pretended I didn't. Classic me. But I wasn't imagining the toothbrush. I know it was hers. I bought it for her. I remember because we fought in Walgreens about fluoride. She said it was mind control for teeth. I said it was literally how cavities work. She cried in aisle 4 and I apologized by buying her the only vegan toothpaste they had, which tasted like mint and regret. And now here it was. Back. And that was just the beginning of the weirdness. That same night, I came home to find a jar of fig jam in my fridge. She was the only person I've ever known who ate fig jam. I'm allergic to figs. I live alone. And my front door was locked. Reddit. I swear on whatever credibility a man with a Cheeto-stained hoodie and a mortgage in default has left, I am being haunted by my ex-wife. But she's not dead. Not even close. Because 2 nights later, she knocked on my door. And she said, "You weren't supposed to leave before the reveal." The reveal. I haven't slept since. I just stood there, barefoot, holding a half-empty mug of microwave coffee, staring at Darla like she was a hallucination that hadn't evaporated yet. She looked normal. Jeans, hoodie, hair pulled back in a loose braid like she'd just come from a farmer's market or a cult meeting. Honestly, with her, either was possible. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My brain was trying to compute why a woman I'd ghosted nearly a year ago was now standing on my porch at 11:42 p.m., speaking like we were in the middle of a scripted episode of some psychological drama. "You weren't supposed to leave before the reveal," she repeated, slower this time. Her eyes scanned my apartment behind me, as if checking to see if the scene was set correctly, like I was a prop, and she was the only actor with a copy of the script. She tilted her head. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Because I'm weak. Because I'm spineless. Because I am, in the deepest core of my pathetic being, still entangled in the web she spun the moment I slipped a ring on her finger in front of a justice of the peace who smelled like whiskey and hand sanitizer. She didn't even wait for me to offer her a seat, just walked in like she owned the lease. Her eyes flicked toward the jam in the fridge, then the toothbrush on the counter. She smiled. She smiled. I finally found my voice. "What the hell is going on?" She turned to me, leaned against the counter, and said something that legitimately made me consider checking into a psychiatric facility. "I've been leaving you clues." That's when I laughed, not a real laugh, but that dry, disbelieving kind of exhale that happens right before someone either starts crying or throws a chair through a window. Clues. What is this, a scavenger hunt for emotional trauma? She didn't flinch. "Grover, this was never about the divorce. It was about closure. You left before I could give it to you. So I had to improvise. By planting fig jam and dental hygiene products in my life like a deranged Easter bunny." She shrugged. "I knew you'd notice eventually." That's when I really started to unravel. Because she said it like this was all planned. Like she had been orchestrating some theatrical, multi-act breakup experience. And I ruined it by walking out of the theater before the final scene. My ears started ringing. The lights in the kitchen suddenly felt too bright. I backed away, bumping into the coat rack that hadn't held a coat in 6 months. She followed me with her eyes. Calm. Serene. Like I was the crazy one. "Darla," I said, "I don't know what sick little closure game you're trying to play, but I'm not part of it anymore. I left because I couldn't live like that. You were pulling away. Lying. I saw the texts. I saw how you started hiding everything. You think this is about him? She interrupted, her voice going sharp, just for a second. This was never about Blaine. God, you still think so small. That sentence hit me like a slap. My throat dried instantly. Then what the hell was it about? She stepped closer, and what she said next made my blood run cold. I needed you to see the truth. But you left before I could show you. Now you're going to have to come back with me. I blinked. Back where? She pulled something from her pocket. It was a key. A key with a leather tag I'd seen once before, a tiny symbol branded into it that I hadn't thought about in years. It was the key to the old cabin. The one she disappeared to before everything went to hell. You never saw what I left behind, did you? She asked. That's where the reveal still waits. And whether you like it or not, it's time. And with that, she placed the key in my palm, closed my fingers around it, and whispered, If you don't show up tomorrow, I'll assume you've chosen to forget. But the truth won't forget you. Then she walked out. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at that stupid key. Because I remembered something now. Something I'd buried. That cabin. That's where I found her phone. The one with the photos she never meant me to see. And I had deleted every single one. Or at least, I thought I did. The next morning, I stood in the parking lot of a gas station 40 miles out of town, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, staring at the old Trailhead Road sign that led to the cabin. My hands were shaking. Maybe it was caffeine. Maybe it was fear. Probably both. I hadn't been back here since everything cracked open, since the week she vanished and returned with eyes I didn't recognize and silence I couldn't break. The cabin wasn't on any map. It was originally owned by her uncle, then her weird aunt, then technically no one, after a mysterious probate hearing no one in the family talked about. It sat on land with no utilities, no signal, no comfort. We used to joke it was the perfect place to hide a body. The joke doesn't feel funny anymore. I should have turned back. I should have thrown the key into the ravine and blocked her number again. Instead, I drove. I parked where the dirt road ended, walked the last quarter mile through overgrown brush, and tried not to think about how still everything felt. No birds, no wind, just this hollow tension in the air, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. The cabin finally appeared through the clearing, looking exactly the same and completely different at the same time. Boards warped. The front steps slouched like they were tired of holding secrets. And the front door was already open. I didn't knock. I stepped inside, instantly hit by the smell, old wood, dust, something else. Something sweet, like lavender and something metallic underneath. My eyes adjusted slowly. Nothing looked disturbed at first. The little table where we used to play cards. The stone fireplace with a crooked mantel. Her yoga mat was still rolled in the corner, a cobweb now stretched across it like a warning. And then I saw it. On the table. An envelope. Thick. My name on it. Grover. Written in her unmistakable handwriting. I picked it up with shaking fingers and opened it, expecting maybe a letter. A diary. Maybe some kind of twisted apology. It was a photo. No. A printout of a screenshot. My heart dropped. It was me. Standing in the kitchen of my new apartment. Same hoodie. Same unwashed hair. Same microwave behind me with the blinking clock. Except the photo was dated 4 days ago, taken from an angle that should have been impossible. I spun around, like I'd catch a camera floating in the air. There was no one. I pulled out the rest of the stack. One after another. Dozens of photos. All of me. Some sleeping. Some driving. One was of me in the grocery store holding a box of cereal. Another outside the laundromat, staring into space like a zombie. I felt sick. I dropped them. They scattered across the cabin floor like a crime scene. She had been watching me. Or someone had. That's when the floor creaked behind me. I froze. My breath caught halfway between inhale and scream. I turned, slowly, but no one was there. Not in the doorway. Not in the corner. Not anywhere. And yet I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. And then I heard it. That sound. It started low. A rhythmic knock 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 from upstairs. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. It wasn't fast. It wasn't violent. It was intentional. Like someone was sending a message. The stairs to the upper floor had been nailed shut last year. Darla had claimed there was mold up there. That we shouldn't risk it. I believed her. Like an idiot. But now, hearing those measured knocks from the supposedly sealed-off second floor, I realized something that made my stomach cramp. I had never actually checked. So, like the fool I've always been, I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and walked toward the stairs. They weren't nailed anymore. Someone had removed them. Cleanly. Professionally. Step by step, I climbed into the dark. The knocking stopped as soon as I reached the top. And then, from the end of the hallway, I heard Darla's voice. Not yelling. Not crying. Just one sentence. Spoken calmly, but not to me. He's here. Just like you said. I stood at the top of the stairs, paralyzed, flashlight flickering in my sweaty grip, staring down the narrow hallway that hadn't seen daylight in years. The wood beneath my feet groaned like it was protesting my presence. Darla's voice still echoed in my skull. He's here. Just like you said. It wasn't fear in her tone. It wasn't even surprise. It was worse. It was certainty. The hallway was lined with 3 doors, 2 bedrooms, and a tiny bathroom. All of them were closed, but only one had light seeping out beneath the bottom. That's where her voice had come from. That's where I was headed, apparently, even though every fiber of logic in my body begged me to turn around and get the hell out of there. But I didn't. I wish I had. I reached the door and raised my hand to knock. Why? I don't know. Maybe I still thought I was in some version of reality where etiquette applied, but before I could, it creaked open on its own. The room was dim, lit only by an old desk lamp with a cracked shade. It smelled like cedar and something faintly chemical. And sitting there, in a wooden chair across from Darla, was a man I'd never seen before, but who smiled at me like we were childhood friends. He was maybe in his late 40s. Pale, long face, thinning brown hair, hands folded neatly in his lap. He wore a forest green sweater that looked expensive and out of place, like he'd been pulled from a Manhattan cafe and dropped into a horror film. And his eyes, that's the first thing I noticed, were warm. Too warm. The kind of warmth that made my skin crawl. You finally made it, he said. His voice was soft, like a therapist who's trying to manipulate you into crying. I looked at Darla. She didn't look back. She was staring at the floor, jaw tight, lips trembling slightly. There was something brittle in her body language, like she wasn't in control anymore. And that terrified me. Who the hell are you? I asked, stepping into the room, my flashlight shaking. The man gestured for me to sit. Let's not start with anger. I'm here to help you, Grover. He knew my name. Of course he did. You didn't answer my question. He sighed gently, like I was being difficult. I'm the one Darla came to. Last year. When she couldn't sleep. When she kept seeing your face in the corners of mirrors. When your voice followed her through hallways. You hurt her, Grover. You left a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. I stared at him, not blinking. She cheated. She lied. I left because I had nothing left to give. What the hell are you talking about? The man tilted his head, still smiling. Is that your truth? Because that's not how she tells it. I turned to Darla. Darla, is this some kind of, what, gaslighting retreat? What is this? You're seriously letting some stranger sit here and psychoanalyze me in the ruins of our marriage like it's an escape room? She didn't answer. She finally looked up, and her eyes were brimming with tears. But not sad tears. Terrified ones. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, the man raised a hand. Let me show you something, he said. From a drawer, he pulled out a black binder. Thick. Worn. He placed it gently on the desk and slid it toward me. I didn't move. This, he said, is the truth. Not your version. Not hers. The truth. I didn't want to touch it. I wanted to burn it. But of course, I opened it. The first page was a printed email. From me. To Darla. But I'd never written it. My name was on it. But the words, they weren't mine. Cold. Clinical. Like a stranger wearing my skin. The subject line read, I am done pretending I care. I flipped the page. More emails. Dozens. Texts too. All from me. Pages and pages of venom I never wrote. Screenshots of conversations I never had. Photos of bruises on Darla's arms, dated after I left, with captions implying I did it. What the hell is this? I choked out. The man smiled again. Memory is fragile, Grover. And when you walk away from unfinished stories, someone else gets to write the ending. These are the pages you forfeited. I looked at Darla again. Her hands were clenched into fists so tight her knuckles were white. This isn't real, I said, backing away. This is some messed up manipulation. No, he said quietly. This is Reconstruction. The you who left a hole. And that hole got filled with pain, confusion, and eventually, new narrative. One that fit her healing process. My knees buckled, and I fell into the chair across from him. The flashlight rolled across the floor, the beam landing on a crack in the wall that looked eerily like a spider's web. "You're saying she believes I did all this?" I whispered. The man nodded slowly. "Belief is more powerful than fact, and she's not the only one who believes it." He leaned forward, voice now barely above a whisper. "Others have read the binder." That's when Darla finally spoke. "They're coming tomorrow." I couldn't process what she meant. "They're coming tomorrow." Like we were expecting guests. Like we needed snacks and folding chairs. I stared at Darla, hoping to find some trace of irony or sarcasm in her face. Something to assure me that this was just a twisted therapy intervention or a failed couple's retreat gone rogue. But no, she was trembling. Her lips slightly parted, jaw locked. Not dramatic. Not performative. Real fear. The kind that comes from knowledge, not uncertainty. The man, the one who still hadn't told me his name, stood up slowly and placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't even flinch. "Darla's been preparing for this day for almost a year," he said softly, like he was narrating a bedtime story. "After you left, she needed structure. She needed truth. And when truth couldn't be agreed upon, she needed witnesses." My throat was dry as ash. Witnesses to what? He gave me a long look. The kind of look you give someone before they're about to hear something they can't unhear. "To everything you left behind." I stood up, nearly knocking the chair over. My pulse was hammering in my ears. "This is insane. You're acting like I committed some unspeakable crime." I walked away from a marriage that was already dead. She was lying to me. She was sneaking around. Don't make me out to be the villain just because I didn't stick around for the epilogue. The man didn't react. He merely gestured toward the window, the one that looked out over the backyard where Darla used to hang wind chimes. I stepped forward and peeked outside, expecting the same rotted picnic table and overgrown grass I remembered. Instead, there were chairs. 7 of them. Wooden. Arranged in a perfect circle in the middle of the lawn. Each one had something resting on the seat. I couldn't quite make them out in the fading light, but they looked like manila folders. Thick ones. Bulging at the sides. "What is this?" I asked, voice cracking. "The tribunal," the man said. I turned around slowly, not sure if I had heard him right. He nodded, calm as ever. "You think this is just about a marriage ending. About a toothbrush and some fig jam and a broken heart. But it's not. This is about legacy, Grover. About testimony. The story that gets told when you're not in the room. Tomorrow, each of those chairs will be filled. And each person will have a folder. Your folder." I backed away from the window. "Who are they?" "People you've forgotten. People you've wronged. People who've lived in the blind spots of your life. Not just Darla. Others. Names you probably wouldn't remember, but who remember you." I almost laughed. It was so theatrical, so over the top, it felt like satire. "You've got to be kidding me. What is this? A Reddit revenge fantasy? Are you forming some kind of X's anonymous cult out here in the woods?" Darla's voice cut through my rant like a scalpel. Quiet. Precise. "You don't get to joke about this anymore." Her words froze the air in the room. "You left me, Grover. But not before erasing me. You didn't just disappear. You made it impossible for anyone to find you. You deleted your email, changed your number, ghosted your friends, your family, me. You left like a coward. No explanation. No goodbye. Just a silent purge. Do you know what that does to someone?" I had no answer. Because she was right. I had deleted myself. It wasn't about self-care or reclaiming my peace or any of that new age crap. It was panic. I ran because I couldn't confront the rotting thing our marriage had become, and somewhere in the back of my head, I thought maybe, just maybe, if I disappeared, the damage would too. But it didn't. It followed me here. "They'll ask questions tomorrow," the man said. "You'll have the opportunity to answer, to tell your side. But the evidence has already been submitted. And once the record is sealed, that's the story the world will remember." I shook my head, barely able to speak. "You talk like this is a courtroom." He nodded. "Not a courtroom. Something older." He turned to leave, as if the meeting were over. Darla followed, but paused in the doorway. "You have tonight," she said. "That's it. After that, whatever you don't say becomes part of your silence." And then they were gone. Just like that. I was left alone in the upstairs room, surrounded by photos I didn't take, messages I didn't write, and a calendar counting down to something I didn't understand. I didn't sleep. Not even for a second. Because when I finally went back downstairs, there was a new envelope on the table. It had no name on it. Just one word in block letters. Confess. Morning came without color. A heavy gray fog blanketed the woods like it had been poured from the sky, muffling every sound and turning the world outside the cabin into something cold and shapeless. I stood by the window for what felt like hours, staring at those 7 chairs, waiting for them to be filled. I hadn't slept. My eyes felt raw. My thoughts were scrambled, like a deck of cards someone had thrown into the air. I kept reading and rereading the word on that envelope. Confess. No instructions. No threat. Just that one word, heavy like a brick in my chest. Around 9 a.m., the first person arrived. It was a woman. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark red hair, pale face, gray coat buttoned to the throat. I didn't recognize her at first, not until she sat down and crossed her legs the same way she did every morning back in college. Rebecca. We had dated for 3 months. She had wanted to move in. I had ghosted her over Thanksgiving break. She opened the folder on her lap and waited. The second was a man in a wheelchair. His hands trembled slightly as he wheeled himself through the grass. I knew him too, Randy. We worked at the same hardware store years ago. I'd called out sick for a week to avoid testifying on his behalf when he was wrongly accused of stealing. The manager fired him. I never returned his calls. By the time the 4th chair was taken, I stopped pretending I didn't remember them. The memories returned like acid, slow and burning. The youngest was a guy I barely knew. I couldn't even recall his name until I saw the tattoo on his wrist. I remembered him now. Teddy. He had once tried to join a friend group I was in, and I had orchestrated a group chat to make fun of him. We'd called him Echo because he repeated himself when nervous. I thought it was hilarious. He didn't. By 10:30 a.m., all 7 chairs were full. And Darla? She stood at the center. No podium. No notes. Just her, holding the binder I had flipped through the night before like it was a sacred text. The man in the green sweater, still nameless, appeared beside her. He motioned for me to come outside. I did. Because of course I did. They gave me a chair in the middle, facing them. No table. No paper. Just me and them. The accused and the witnesses. We'll begin now, the man said calmly. Each testimony will be read aloud. You may respond after each one, but you may not interrupt. Darla nodded and opened the binder. And what followed wasn't what I expected. It wasn't rage. It wasn't screaming. It wasn't even accusations. It was grief. Each person spoke about a version of me I had forgotten. Not because I had physically hurt them. No, but because I had made them feel like ghosts. Like they didn't matter. Like they could be erased, and I wouldn't lose sleep. Rebecca described how she waited at a restaurant for 3 hours after I invited her to dinner and never showed. How she sat through 2 birthdays thinking I might call. Randy told them how I laughed at a joke while he packed his things in a cardboard box, asking the universe why his friend wouldn't speak up for him. Teddy broke halfway through his own story. He said nothing hurt more than realizing the people he admired saw him as a punchline. That for months after, he would write text messages and delete them, thinking he was annoying. He said, I thought I was the problem, but I wasn't. You just made me believe I was. Each folder had evidence. Emails, screenshots, messages I barely remembered sending. Some were cruel. Some were careless. All of them were real. The man in the green sweater, who I was starting to think wasn't just a man at all, remained expressionless. But Darla was crying. Not out of vindication. Out of release. Like she had been carrying all of this. Not just her pain, but everyone else's. Waiting for me to see it. And I hated it. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right. I had spent years painting myself as the quiet one, the sensitive guy who got left behind, the whiny narrator in a world that didn't understand him. But now, listening to them, I wasn't the misunderstood one. I was the one who quietly broke people, one cold shoulder at a time. When the 7th person finished, a guy named Logan I barely remembered from a summer job, there was silence. The fog had started to burn off. The man in green turned to me. This was your trial, he said. Not for what you did, but for what you never cleaned up. The lives you touched without thought. The people you edited out of your own story. I wanted to yell. I wanted to run. But I didn't. I sat there and did something I hadn't done in years. I apologized. Not the dramatic, sweeping kind. Not the self-serving kind. I just said, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. Each one of them nodded once. Some forgave me. Some didn't. And then, without fanfare, they left. One by one. Quietly. When I turned to Darla, she was gone. Only the man in green remained. "You've one more folder," he said, placing it on my lap. It had no name, no markings. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph of Darla in a hospital room, holding a baby, and the birth certificate had my name. My hands were trembling as I stared at the birth certificate. It was folded behind the photo like a hidden blade. Darla's full name in the mother field, and in the father line, my name, clear as day. Grover Lee Harrow. No middle initial. No confusion. No denial. A child. My child. I stood up too fast, my legs wobbling, nearly knocking over the chair. My brain was sprinting ahead of me, tripping over questions, slamming into memories I didn't know were connected. A year ago, when she vanished to that cabin, when she came back distant, reserved, a shadow of herself. I thought it was guilt. I thought it was another man. But now, sitting here with this fragile document in my hand, I realized what it had actually been: fear. She was pregnant, and I had no idea. I stumbled back into the cabin, clutching the folder like it was oxygen. The living room was empty. The man in green was nowhere to be found. The air was still, but not calm, expectant, like the walls were holding their breath for what came next. I found Darla in the back room, sitting in the corner like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Her eyes were red, her arms wrapped tightly around her midsection. And when she looked up at me, she didn't look angry. She looked relieved. "You found it," she whispered. My throat was so dry I could barely form the words. "Why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head slowly. "Because you left before I could. I was going to. That night. I had rehearsed it. A whole speech. I thought maybe the news would pull us back together, or at least give us something real to focus on. But when I came home, you were gone. Not just physically. Completely. You burned the bridge behind you and left me in the smoke." I sat down across from her. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? "You could have found me," I said finally, but it came out weak. Pathetic. Defensive. She narrowed her eyes. "How, Grover? You deleted every trace of yourself. You moved without telling a soul. You shut down your email, ghosted your job, your landlord, your friends. I thought you were dead. I even filed a missing persons report. And then, one day, I got a postcard. No return address. Just 4 words. I'm not coming back. That was your closure." I swallowed hard. I remembered that postcard. I had written it in a moment of self-righteous despair, thinking I was being noble by not dragging her through a long, bitter ending. I thought disappearing was a mercy. But it wasn't mercy. It was erasure. And I had done it so cleanly, so completely, I never stopped to wonder what I might be cutting myself off from. "You should have told me about the baby anyway," I said, quieter now. Darla looked at me with a strange combination of pity and pain. "I was going to. I even wrote you letters. Emails I never sent. Recorded voice messages I never had the courage to play. I kept thinking you'd come back. I told myself if you did, then I'd know you were ready. But the weeks turned into months. And the pregnancy, it wasn't easy." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked away. "There were complications. I won't get into the medical terms, but by the time she was born, the doctors weren't sure she'd make it. She was in NICU for 3 weeks. I named her Olive. You would have hated it," she said with a small, cracked smile. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My vision blurred. My chest felt like it was filling with sand. I thought I had lost a wife. A marriage. A version of myself. I had no idea I had also lost a child, not to death, but to the distance I had created in my own cowardice. "She's okay now," Darla said softly, as if sensing where my mind had gone. "She's healthy, smart, stubborn, like you. She refuses to eat anything green unless it's shaped like a dinosaur. And she dances in her sleep." I felt the weight of the folder again. The photo of Darla in the hospital bed, holding that tiny bundled life, one I had never touched, never seen, never even imagined, became heavier than anything I'd ever carried. "I want to meet her," I said suddenly. "Please. I have to." Darla didn't answer right away. She stood, walked over to the old cabinet in the corner, and pulled something from it. A tablet. She tapped the screen and handed it to me. A video. It was only a few seconds long. A little girl, no older than 1, sitting on the floor in a sunlit room, smacking blocks together, making unintelligible baby sounds. Her hair was dark, her smile crooked, and for one terrifying, beautiful moment, I saw myself in her. The screen went black. Darla sat down again. I brought you here because I needed you to see the damage you caused. To own it. To hear it out loud. But I also brought you here to give you one final decision. She reached into her coat and handed me a small, blank envelope. Inside was a train ticket. One way. Departure, tomorrow. Destination, the town where she now lived. You can come, she said. But if you do, you don't get to disappear again. You don't get to rewrite your pain into a more comfortable story. You show up. You stay. You listen. And you parent. I stared at the ticket. And for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel numb. I felt terrified. Because now I finally had something to lose again. I didn't sleep again that night. Not because I was spiraling this time, but because for once, my mind wasn't trying to escape. It was sorting. I sat in that same wooden chair at the kitchen table of the cabin. The train ticket folded and unfolded so many times the ink began to smear. I didn't need more time to think. The truth had already rooted itself in me. But the weight of what came next kept pressing down like a second gravity. I had spent so long hiding from the version of myself I didn't want to be. I never once stopped to consider the version I could become. The one who doesn't vanish when things get hard. The one who answers the call, even when it comes too late. The one who shows up, even if it's awkward, even if it's undeserved. I left the cabin at sunrise. The chairs were still there, now damp with morning dew. The fog had thinned, revealing the woods around the clearing for what they were. Plain trees, plain grass, just a place. No more ghosts. No more judgment. Just space. And in that silence, I said a quiet thank you to no one in particular. By the time I reached the train station, the world had already started waking up. Birds. Distant cars. The metallic rhythm of something being repaired nearby. Normal sounds. Unremarkable ones. And for once, that felt beautiful. I stood at the platform with the envelope in my coat pocket, watching people drift in from the parking lot with coffee cups and overstuffed duffel bags. I kept expecting something cinematic to happen, a last-minute confrontation, Darla pulling up in a car to stop me, or the man in the green sweater suddenly appearing and shaking his head like I'd chosen the wrong ending. But none of that happened, because this wasn't a movie. This was my life. And this time, I wasn't running from it. The train arrived with a low roar, slowing to a crawl as it approached the platform. I stepped forward as the doors hissed open, clutching the ticket tighter than I needed to. The moment I boarded, I felt my chest unclench, not because I was sure, but because I was committed. I sat by the window, let the miles unspool behind me, and tried to picture what she might look like now, Olive. My daughter. A name that had sounded strange just a day ago, but now tasted like something sacred. I didn't have expectations. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just had the truth and a desire to start from zero. The train pulled into a small town station just after noon. Clean. Quiet. A few benches. A newspaper vending machine someone had graffitied with a smiley face. I stepped off and scanned the platform. For a second, I thought no one was there. Then I saw them. Darla, standing a few yards away, holding a little girl on her hip. Olive was bundled in a yellow sweater, her hair tied up in a wild little puff that looked like it had never once obeyed a brush. Her eyes caught mine immediately, wide, uncertain, curious. I froze. Darla didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just nodded, a small, simple gesture. We're here, if you are. And that's all I needed. I walked toward them slowly, every step feeling like a page being turned. When I reached them, Darla adjusted Olive slightly, so she could face me more directly. The girl stared at me, mouth slightly open, like she was trying to place me in a memory that hadn't happened yet. Then she reached out her tiny hand. Not to hug, just to touch. She pressed her fingers against my jacket, near my chest, and gave the smallest nod. Then turned her face into her mother's shoulder and yawned. I laughed. Not a broken laugh, not a bitter one. A real one. Because that was enough. For now. I looked at Darla. I don't expect forgiveness. She gave a quiet exhale. Then we're starting in the right place. We walked to the parking lot together. No promises. No ultimatums. Just three people with a long road ahead. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was finally walking toward it.